Hi there, esteemed audience, and welcome to another episode of Middle Grade Ninja. I'm your host, Rob Kent. As you know, I'm the author of Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees, the greatest novel ever written. And great news, the greatest novel ever written is available as an audiobook, a paperback, and the ebook is free. Free to download whenever you're watching or listening to us, wherever fine ebooks are sold. Rob, I hear you saying, how can you possibly survive if you give your book away? Don't you worry about me, esteemed audience. As soon as you get hooked on the series, I'm going to charge you cash money for books 2 and 3. We're going to have a good time. I've also got horror novels available under the name Robert Kent. For more information on all of that, plus interviews with literary agents, editors, authors, everyone in this world who is great, go to middlegradeninja.com. You get the whole back catalog of the show and more. And there's no time. My God, we've got to get to our guest. Alda P. Dobbs is here. Alda, how are you this evening?
Good. How are you? Thank you for having me here. I've been hearing you for many years, and finally, I can't believe I'm here. It's a dream come true. Thank you.
Is it everything you thought it would be?
So far.
So far, we're doing all right. A few seconds in. Quality control. Well, if you've been listening, then you know that I never summarize anybody else's biography and anybody else's book, and that's how I make sure I maintain friends in the industry. So the best place to start is always, if you would, give esteemed audience kind of an overview of your background.
Sure. So I was born in Mexico. Then I moved to the States when I was a really young kid, and I started school not speaking a word of English. And it took a while. English is so difficult. It took a while for me to learn it. It took me about 4 or 5 years. I was about 10 or 11 when I started getting a grasp of the language. But I always had that love-hate relationship with English. So I was a reluctant reader. I was kind of upset that I wouldn't fully understand it. And I wanted to read in Spanish, but there was no books in Spanish. So it was always that love-hate. But I love storytelling. And I wanted to be a storyteller because I always loved hearing stories from my family. And so I had that in my head that I wanted to be a storyteller or a writer. And once I got to high school, I remember taking the bus home from work. It was late night. I was riding the bus back home and tired as heck. And I remember looking beside me and somebody had left a book behind. And I wondered what book it was. So I picked it up, saw the orange cover, and it was Catcher in the Rye. And I was like, oh my goodness, sounds interesting. It sounds like an old book, and it looked tattered and whatnot. So I remember I started reading it on the bus, and I was hooked. I got home, and I remember I didn't even eat. I went straight, to the living room. I just started reading it and read the whole book in one sitting. I was just so enthralled by it, and I could not believe it. There was so much magic in that book, and I figured, you know what, I want to do this one day. And so when I got to college and took my placement test, I bombed the English test and ended up getting remedial. So I figured, you know what, that's a sign. I'm not meant to be a writer. Put that in the back burner, and I pursued studies in physics and engineering. Got those degrees, worked in an engineering firm, but I still had that fire burning about being a writer. And finally, 10 years ago, we lived in Italy, and that's when, everything was so inspiring around me there. And I figured, you know what, this is it. I'm going to start writing. And that was 10 years ago. So now I have my first book coming out, and that's pretty much my background.
I'm trying to figure out if that's a good thing or a bad thing to start with Catcher in the Rye. On the one hand, if it's not that great, then I guess you don't maybe you don't get hooked. If it's just a standard, not so great James Patterson novel, maybe it's not that great. On the other hand, when you start with Catcher in the Rye, that whatever the next book you pick up, unless it's Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees, is probably going to be a letdown.
No, I was amazed. I was just blown away. Yeah, to this day, I read that book and I still get chills.
So, well, I've got all kinds of questions for you. I guess let's start with this idea that you didn't speak English until what you started kindergarten, but it still took almost 5 years for you to speak English. Then you go to you're in college and you get placed in remedial English for a while. So how does that improve? I know that you took 2 years of Latin and 1 year of German, and that helped improve your language?
Oh my goodness, yeah. I remember I signed up for Latin, and the first day of class we went in, and I remember the Latin teacher looking at all of the class, all of the students, and she said, okay, for the first 6 weeks, I'm not going to teach you Latin the semester. And we all kind of gave her a baffled look. She said, I'm going to teach you English the first 6 weeks. And I thought she was talking to me. So I turned back and I realized, I'm the only Mexican in the classroom. I'm like, okay, then she's probably not talking to me. I'm surprised she's talking to the whole classroom. And she said that, she's like, I assure you that none of you in this classroom speak English correctly or know how the proper use of the language. And I can't teach you a second language unless you dominate one of them. So for those 6 weeks, it was like boot camp, English boot camp. It was just, everything and all about English. And in those 6 weeks, I learned more than I had throughout my middle school and high school. So my confidence in English just increased tremendously. And then I took German, and that reinforced a lot of the learning. And when I joined the military too, just being amongst other people and speaking more English and whatnot. And for the longest time, now that I write for children, looking back, I realized I had applied to so many scholarships and fellowships and grants and whatnot. So all along, I've been a writer. And so it was just a confidence in me, whether I had that confidence in the language to take authority and say, no, I will tell a story because I feel that I could tell it, So more than anything, more than learning English itself, is just a confidence.
So obviously, you've mastered the language at this point, because I've just enjoyed your novel. I've been poking around your website, when did you feel confident that, okay, now I've got it, I can maybe pursue writing a book in English as a serious pursuit?
I think I started when 10 years ago I started writing, and I had no idea, how to start. And when I had read a lot of children's books, but this time I started reading them differently. Okay, I said, let me break it down, see how scenes are written, and kind of, I guess it's a science background in me. You dissect, a specimen, or you break down the structure of buildings, you find out how it's made, or chemically, molecules, see how a certain element is made, or a certain molecule, check the elements. And I figured, okay, I could do this with writing too. Let me break down each scene, each paragraph, each sentence. Why does it flow this way? Or why did the author use this character in this manner? So I delved into all these middle grade books, and little by little, I started getting confidence about writing my own stories. And yeah, definitely the first manuscript I wrote, it's something I was still learning to how to master the whole story, narrative, and arc and whatnot. And that's okay, because I learned, and I put it in the drawer and it's sitting there right now. Hopefully one day it'll see the day of light. But after that, I said, okay, let me get my experience with articles, magazine articles. So I started submitting to articles, magazines and newspapers, and I started getting published. And then when Highlights bought one story, that's when I said, okay, because that was my goal for children, to be able to have that voice. And when Highlights bought the article and published it, that's when I said, okay, I think I'm getting somewhere. And writing more, this book, when I started writing this book, that's also when I realized, when I took it to conferences for critiques and I started getting positive feedback, unlike with the first manuscript, this time I was getting more, okay, let me see it, keep in touch. And that's when I knew, okay, I'm getting somewhere now. So that's how I sensed it, that, okay, the confidence started growing, and especially in the English language. So that's how I think I found out.
But 10 years ago, are you still working your day job at that point as an engineer?
Yes.
And you're about to have the first of your 2 children.
Yeah, that was right before I had kids. It was 2009 when the recession, 2008 recession was hitting still kind of hard, and they were threatening with pink slips. every month they kept threatening with pink slips, and at that point I was still living in Texas. So luckily we moved to Italy, and right as I started looking for a job in Italy, that's when I said, okay, let me try this writing gig. And there was the jobs in engineering were kind of few far in between. And I did find a job as a pre-K teacher at a Montessori school in Italy at a NATO base of all places. And it was such a great experience because I got to be with kids and I saw their reactions. And once again, and I didn't have kids myself at that time. So I think it was, a godsend to be there and experience that. And of course, later on I had children, and that helps a lot too.
You think that's what directed you toward writing for children, or had you decided prior to that? When did you decide that writing for children is where you want to be, or have you decided that? Is this a stepping stone to your romance career or whatever?
No, when I was 19, that's the first time I remember feeling that I wanted to write for children. I don't know what it was. I think seeing nature. I've always loved nature, and seeing certain animals and whatnot, I started getting these anthropomorphic stories in my head and the voices and whatnot. So I think I've always wanted that. And I've always been attracted to children's literature as well.
Gotcha. And what are some of your favorite books for children from when did you first start reading children's books, if you're starting with Catcher in the Rye?
Catch in the Rye, then I started reading like Wrinkle in Time. That became a favorite of mine, and Bridge to Terabithia. That one, oh my goodness, I read that one a lot of times. And Charlotte's Web, and anything by E.B. White. I loved it. And then of course later on, Kate DiCamillo, anything she wrote. And then I started reading Avi in all his books, the Poppy Seed series. It was a Poppy, the series was great, and Crispin, and so I've always liked the classics a lot, but I love the modern books as well that are coming out, and but a lot of I stick to the classics just because I love the style, and but there's a lot of contemporary too that I've enjoyed too.
You had the opportunity to meet Avi, didn't you?
I did. I did. Oh my goodness. I was at a conference, an SCPWI conference in Colorado. And it was one of my first ones. I'm still nervous. I don't talk to anyone. I'm quiet. I'm in the back tables. And it was a Saturday, so college football was going on. And I figured I'd sneak out and go catch a score of the Alabama game. So I'm sitting in the bar there looking at the game, and somebody behind me asks what the score was. And I remember turning, and it was Avi. He's standing there and asking me what the football score is. And I remember I kind of got lost and trembled, and I gave him the score. And he stood there and looking at the game. I told myself, okay, you have one of the greatest writers here. Ask him something, don't miss this opportunity. And so finally I turned to him and I said, what's the best advice you could give me as a new writer? If you could give me only one piece of advice, what would it be? And he turned and looked at me and said, well, do you want to make it a career? Yes or no? And I said, yeah, I'd love to make it a career. He said, then get an agent. I said, really? He said, yeah, if you just want to write one book or two, I'd say don't bother. But if you want to make it a career, then get an agent. And I said, okay, all right. So his words changed, at least gave me guidance, because I was so lost. I didn't know if I should go the agent route, the publishing, small press, or whatnot. And at that point, those words really solidified a lot of the notions that I didn't know what to do. It kind of gave me a lot of guidance. So I always thank him for that.
This seems like a good opportunity to shamelessly plug episode 64, esteemed audience. There have been many out-of-body experiences on this show, but episode 64, I talked to Avi, and you can see it on my face if you watch us on YouTube. I'm just a little bit shocked for at least the first hour of that conversation. Like, really? Avi's here? Really? That's crazy. This is a dream I'm having. I'm going to wake up, and then what a nice dream it will have been. But no, anytime I question, did that happen in reality? I can go check episode 64, and sure enough, there's Avi.
Wow.
So, okay. you get involved, and I get the sense that you don't come to anything lightly. One doesn't just become an engineer because it's the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
One doesn't go to the Air Force. In fact, let's start there. What does being an engineer and your time with the Air Force bring to your writing career? Does that give you a level of discipline from which to begin and form regular habits?
Yes, it does, yeah, give me a sort of a discipline, but more than anything, it's just the exposure I had of cultures, of different cultures. I the first time I was born in Mexico, of course, and moved to Texas, but when I joined the military, that was the first time I left Texas. And I remember my first duty station was Mississippi, Biloxi, and I was so enamored with the trees. I remember I had my uh, those disposable Kodak cameras, and I was just snapping pictures of the trees just because I thought they were so beautiful. I'd never seen trees like that. And Cajun, I didn't know what Cajun was. I didn't know what gumbo was, and all these foods and traditions and cultures. And I was mesmerized. That was just Biloxi, Mississippi. So I was just like, oh my goodness, what's out there, you know? And then luckily I was so fortunate I got sent to Germany. And that was another opening for me, you know, to actually speak German with Germans and not in college and experience other European countries and other cultures and just embracing all these cultures. And the same thing with engineering. I was able to travel a lot, and I was able to do 1 year, and I think it was a few months. I think it was 7-8 months over in New Zealand. I got to live there. And the project I was working in was in Australia, so I got sent to Australia several times. And again, that exposure to cultures, different ways of seeing the world, I love that. And I think a lot of that comes out in my writing, just the fact that I want to find the connection, how we are all connected. And that's what I aim with my writing all the time, trying to find that correlation between us all, that we're all human and we're all in some form or fashion connected.
Out of curiosity, how many languages do you speak at this point?
Oh my goodness, one only. I think I've forgotten most of them by now. I kind of speak English, not too well. No, I speak Spanish, but you do. If you don't use them, you do lose them. Because when I was in Italy, I wasn't speaking Spanish, and I was amazed how quickly, you know, that started going away. I would come home to my family, and my sisters would argue with me, and I couldn't keep up arguing in Spanish. So they were just speaking so fast. But now I've practiced with my kids. I speak Spanish to them, so it came back again, and so English and German, I used to be able to speak it a little bit more. Now I could read it and understand it, but my tongue doesn't, it's not as good anymore. Italian, I was able to pick up Italian just because it's so similar to the Spanish. And the same thing, I could read it really well and understand it, but the speaking part, I'm losing it. But it took me a while with Italian, because for the longest time I thought I was speaking Italian, because we were living in Naples, Italy. And when I left Naples to go to other places in Italy, I noticed that they wouldn't understand me. But it was because they told me later on, I came to find out that I was speaking Napolitano, which is a dialect to Naples, and it's not Italian. You know, right away they would let me know, no, you're not speaking Italian, you're speaking Napolitano. So, which I enjoy. I love Napolitano, and I love the culture of Naples. And so, yeah, later on I picked up Italian, but yeah, my heart's always going to be in Naples.
I was just thinking that over the past year and a half, however, time has no meaning anymore, however long we've been in some version of quarantine or lockdown, if I hadn't had this podcast, I might have forgotten to speak a language, period. What I wanted to ask also about when you get started. I know you get involved with the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators pretty early on, and then you won multiple awards. I think I saw 12 honors and awards listed. Things like the Sustainable Arts Foundation grant, Amplifying the Unsung Voices Scholarship. And just on with awards and with grants. How did you get started seeking those out, and how did those aid you in getting started writing?
I think I started since I was in college. Probably every time when I was in physics, I would do searches for scholarships in physics or sciences and stuff like that. And I got in that habit because I needed the money. I was poor, I was broke. So I always needed money. So I was always trying to find scholarships and opportunities. And so I started learning how to apply for those. And also once I was going to go into grad school, I applied for grants, and I had the National Science Foundation and Homeland Security grants that were awarded. And that's when I started getting more confidence that, yes, I could do this. And when I started writing, I figured somebody told me about the grants and whatnot. Through conferences, I would learn about them, but I didn't feel the confidence. I said, okay, wait, I got to learn how to write, better or feel, because a lot of times they want to know that you're dedicated, that you are serious about that profession. So I gave myself some time and a couple of years. And once I had manuscript, I would submit part of that manuscript, because they ask you the first 20, 30 pages, and you have to fill out an artist statement and a proposal sometimes, and a cover letter or CV. And I would submit that whole packet. And honestly, the first year or two, I would not get anything at all. I wouldn't even hear back from them. But you keep trying, and keep trying, and you start getting better. Then I started getting a hang of it, that I had to be more creative in the language of my proposals, because I was trying to be more engineering, analytical and whatnot, and that doesn't work in the art. So I had to be more, know how to pitch the stories, know how to pitch my proposals and whatnot. So once I learned that, and I was able to write better as well, have better sample pages, and show that I've been published in magazines or newspapers, that weighed more heavy. And once you get one award, that carries on to the next one and the next one and the next one. And before you know it, you start accumulating things. But it does take patience and a lot of, work, that you're going to do it over, and a thick skin. Because, like I said, the first couple of years, I didn't get any awards. And even now, to this day, I apply to a lot of them, and half of them turn me down. So, and it's something you just got to just brush off and apply the next one, just move on.
Well, you did. A lot of people don't. We haven't even gotten to the part where you start querying and looking for agents and editors. So those first couple of years, while you're not getting anything, what is it that keeps you going and keeps you applying to get better?
I'm hard-headed, as I've been told by a lot of people, but I think what kept me going is the passion I had for the story. And the first one, the manuscript I first had, I knew that was a story that had been burning inside me since I was 19, and here you are 20 years, like, I don't want to make myself that old, 20 years later, and I'm trying to, get the story out of my heart. And, of course, like I said, I had to put that one away. But then my passion, every time I had a new project, for instance, the articles, the one for highlights, I said, okay, it was a competition. Back then they used to have a competition for articles, and I put all my heart into that one article. And it didn't win, but that's okay. I got the rejection letter that, thank you for participating, but you didn't win. So once I started writing that article, I put all my heart into it, and I said, okay, I gotta take this serious. And I didn't win, but it was bought later on, and it took another 2 years to get it published. So everything's, slow. So that's why you got to have a lot of patience. So I started with articles, and then when I got the idea of Barefoot Dreams of Petroleum, that was a family story. And like I tell young writers or writers that are starting out, is that you got to have a lot of passion for that story, because it's going to take you a while, and there's going to be times you just want to quit when you get rejection after rejection. But if you have that much passion into it, you're going to fight through it, and you could take breaks. You could put it away for a bit, come back to it, but it's that passion that's going to drive you to get to the finish line.
2013, you write that article for highlights, and that gets you to start thinking maybe there's a full book here. What's that process like when you start imagining Petroleum, and how long does it take you to get some kind of manuscript together?
For this one, I wrote the article, and I have a 7-year-old son. I was pregnant with him when I started writing it. And I remember writing the article and doing the research behind it to see if my family story was actually true or not. And when I found all the details that in fact it had happened, and to realize that the details of the strife and the turmoil my great grandmother had endured were actually true, that's when I figured, you know what, this has to be more than an article. So I turned it into a picture book. So I had my picture book. It was 1,500 words, and it was a humongous picture book. And I took it to conferences. And people would say, oh, no, this is too long. The voice doesn't sing well and whatnot. So finally, I took it to one. I kept practicing, trying to make it better. I took it to another conference a year later. And yeah, it was a year later. And an agent told me she wanted to see the whole thing. And I said, well, you're holding the whole thing. I said, it's a picture book. And she said, oh, really? And she said, well, oh, I thought it was a middle grade novel. And I said, no, it's a picture book. She said, oh, no, you have to turn this into a novel. I want to see what happens to the character before and after this scene. And I said, okay, all right, I'll have it in about a year for you. You know, I didn't want to lose touch base with her. And she said, no. She said, take your time. It's going to take you a while. And yeah, she was absolutely right. It took me another 5 years, you know, with the research and the writing. And of course I had 2 small kids, but it morphed from a picture book to a middle grade novel. And it ended up being this huge manuscript that I submitted to an agent, and it got split to 2 books. There was actually 2 books I had been working on, luckily. And so Barefoot Dreams of Petroleum is book 1 that follows Petroleum in Mexico, and book 2, which is coming out next year, follows Petroleum in the United States. So you never know, you know, you start out an article thinking, you know, it's just going to be an article, but if you pay attention and you have that drive and that passion, it might morph, you know, into a picture book or a middle grade. So,
can we give that agent credit? What was the agent's name?
Yes, her name is Lawrence, Trisha Lawrence. She's with Erin Murphy. Yeah, she was fabulous. She was fantastic.
And Ms. Lawrence, if you're listening, you're welcome on the show anytime, of course. And the second book comes out next year. Do we have a final title on that one yet?
I think they told me today. I think we're still debating with it, but it might be called On the Other Side of the River. Okay. I think. Don't quote me yet, but I think that's what it may be.
And that'll be out right around September next year is the plan?
Yeah, that's the plan. Right now we're working on the edits, and yeah, we're pushing for September of next year.
Excellent. So one more question about getting published, and then we'll talk about the book in full earnest. Barefoot Dreams of Petroleum, available everywhere, esteemed audience. My God, you could be pulling it up while we're talking and purchasing your copies, securing it from the library, however you want to get your hands on this thing. So how do you go about finding your literary agent, or do you find an editor first and then a literary agent?
For me, we moved a lot, so I couldn't get a critique group. I would try to find critique partners and whatnot, and you know, every time we moved, they were established already, so it was really difficult to find one. And we kept, as soon as I found one, we moved, so it was difficult. So finally, my husband became my critique partner, and he's an officer in the Army, so he doesn't sugarcoat anything. You know, he'll tell me straight up the way it is. So I like that. That helped my manuscript a lot to put it in shape. And after I felt, like I said, I went to a lot of conferences to get feedback, and from there, you know, I kept shaping it. And then I was lucky to have participated in 2 mentorship programs. So I had a mentor in Colorado who, it was through SCBWI as well, and then I had another one here in Houston, and both of them were tremendous. They would read my manuscript and give me feedback. So that even guided the manuscript into shape. And after that, I had one beta reader read one part of the story, and she's the one that gave it her blessing. Laura Reesall, she's an author, a children's book author as well. Great author. And she gave it her blessing, and then that's when I send it over to Joan Paquette at Erin Murphy. I had met Joan 3 years before, and she and I stayed in touch, and I submitted to her when I thought it was ready. And there was December of 2019. So you can imagine, everything's happy days, in 2019, and little did we know things were about to change a lot. So that's when I submitted it to Joan. And then she bought it within a month. She read it, and we signed the contract in December.
And you met her originally at a conference?
I met her, yeah, I'd heard from some friends that she was really, really good. So I made it a point to find her and meet her. So back in the day, VonnaCarter.com, she had a website that would list different conferences and where agents would be at and whatnot. So I was, oh my goodness, I was hooked on that website. So I followed different agents, and Joan Pickett was one of them. She had a conference coming up. This was in 2016 in Maine. It's called Agents and Editors, I believe, or Editors and Agents and Editors. It's in Maine. It's a small conference. So that's what I liked about it. It's very intimate, and you get to spend, I think it's half a day with an agent. When you're with other 5 writers, but it's very intimate because you get to talk to them a lot, and they give you feedback right away on the first 20, 25 pages of your manuscript. And we connected then and there, and we're in touch with each other ever since.
And so how do you stay in touch without being awkward? What does that look like?
Yeah, no, I would email her, because I didn't want her to forget me. It was taking me so long. So during holidays, hey, how's it going? Hope you're having a Merry Christmas. I'm still working on it, Or if I had an award or something, I would email her and say, hey, I got this award, for the novel, just, FYI. So she was really sweet. She would reply, oh, great. I'm looking forward to it and whatnot. So just to keep that communication open.
Gotcha. And so when you finally send it to her, she says, yes, this is the book I've always been waiting for. Let's do this immediately. Or is there a period of waiting? And she says, hey, let's do a few revisions. How does that look? What does that look like?
She said, yeah, there's some little things that I want to revise. It shouldn't be much. So we did a little bit of revisions, which took about a month, I'd say. So come February, that's 2020, that's when she said, okay, are you ready? Are you set? And I said, yeah, let's do it. It was mid-February, and off it went to the world, to 12 editors. And of course, that's when COVID just slammed New York City. So, I'm like, my luck, I wait all these years. The month that goes out, that's the one that everything comes down, of course. But so it was hard to get back feedback or phone calls from any of the editors because they were all gone. All the offices were shut, and nobody was getting back to anybody. So, but Sourcebooks, Molly Cusick is the one that responded and said, yes, she was interested. So I said, okay, there's one person. And finally, the other editors started coming back and saying, no, not right now. We already have somebody else. We have something similar. Everyone came back with that. And I believe Scholastic came back saying they were very interested. And I believe it went to 2 other rounds and it was approved. And finally, for the 3rd one, I think they had to say no because of the layoffs that were starting to happen in Scholastic. And they didn't want to take, new writers at that time. It was uncertain times, uncertain times for everybody. So it broke my heart at the time because Scholastic, I grew up seeing the big Scholastic sign at book fairs and whatnot. But I think the universe lines up for a reason. All the plans line up for a reason. And I am so excited that I ended up with Sourcebooks, and because Molly was just a wonder to work with, and I couldn't have asked for a better editor. She had such a passion for that story, and I love that. We fed off each other. The ideas and that same passion just was wonderful. And then the rest of the team, oh my goodness, I was just blown away by the marketing team, the art department, and it's a wonderful publishing house. And I count my lucky stars that I ended up there.
And another shameless plug, Molly Cusick was on here for episode 32. And I'll put a little extra incentive. That was relatively early on in the run of this show, and I'm just learning on the job as we go. I think I asked Molly at least 2 awkward questions that I haven't asked any editor since, because Molly was good enough to give me a reason why I should not ask such awkward questions. So well worth your time, esteemed audience. You're going to hear a phenomenal editor. You're going to hear me put my foot in my mouth. What a wonderful time, episode 32. Episode 32 for her, episode 64 for Avi, but my God, tonight, Alda P. Dobbs, my cup runneth over. The left continues.
Great. No, I remember doing. I had seen Molly before in her show, and I remember when I saw her name, I'm like, I remember that episode. So I had to go back and rewatch it. I saw that one probably like 10 times in one day. And I was like,
did he really just ask that? Oh my gosh, why do they let him do this?
It's great. You did a great job.
Well, let's talk at long last. By God, Molly is listening. Joan Paquette's listening. Joan Paquette, you're welcome on the show anytime. They're listening and they're thinking, are they going to talk about the book? Let's talk about the book. My promise to you was I would not make you sit through me summarizing your book. So what does esteemed audience need to know about Barefoot Dreams of Petroleum?
Well, Barefoot Dreams of Petroleum, just in case you didn't see that big thing in the back right there. It's based on my great-grandmother's stories and my grandmother's stories, because both women lived these childhoods that were full of poverty and hunger and injustices. And those were stories that I wanted to include in the characters and in the themes of Petroleum. And Petroleum is a 12-year-old girl. Her mother died the previous year, and she's stuck, not stuck, but she's got her younger siblings with her now that she's got to take care of and feed and whatnot, because her husband, here we go, her father has been conscripted by the Federalists, so he's been taken away. And right before he's dragged away, she makes a promise to him. She makes a promise that she's going to take care of the 2 siblings and her grandmother, keep them safe, while he promises to come back. He's going to go out to fight with the Federalists, which he hates, but he has to do it. Otherwise, they'll execute him, because a lot of men were executed. They didn't join the Federalists. So he wants to spare Petra that pain. So he joins, but asks Petra to promise him that she'll take care of them. So she makes that promise. He promises to return. But when they're waiting for him, that's when the village gets attacked. And they have to flee. She has to flee with her siblings and her grandmother, who has wobbly knees and achy bones and can barely walk. So they cross the desert and have to make it to safety. And all the while, she has this desire to learn how to read and write. And even though most people like her don't see the need for it, she thinks differently. She says, no, this is what I want, and I want it in my life, and for me and for my siblings. So it's a desire my grandmother had too, to learn how to read and write, and it pained her to be illiterate. And when she was 12, a little bit before she turned 12, she figured it out on her own, how to read and write. So to her, that's one of the biggest accomplishments in her life as a child.
So who is the ideal reader for this story?
This book is ideally for 9 to 12-year-olds. And I've been told, because of the themes it has with war and whatnot, that older children are enjoying it as well. That's what I've heard from librarians and booksellers, reviewers. So ideally it's for the middle grade, upper middle grade, but I had this gentleman reach out to me from Alabama, a white male, and he said that it was a book he would have probably never picked up if he saw it in the bookshelves. But somebody told him, hey, this is a good story. You should read this one. So he sat down and read it, and he said he was just mesmerized. He enjoyed the story. He enjoyed learning the background, because there's so much of the war, of the political and cultural climate that the book covers, that he said it made him understand current crisis right now. And also 20 years ago, he used to travel to Mexico a lot and talk to the workers there, and didn't understand certain things. But this book, he said that just enlightened me. I understood why, they lived the way they lived and everything. So to me, that was a big compliment, that he enjoyed the book, and he started recommending that, and stuff like that, saying, hey, if you might not want to pick up this book if you saw it in a bookshelf, but it's a good book. So, I enjoyed that he gave me that compliment.
Oh, it's thoroughly enjoyed by grown men who call themselves ninjas. I understand it's a wonderful read for everybody. I was curious because I know this is loosely based on your great grandmother. This is based on stories you grew up hearing. Is there an ideal reader within your family that you're hoping is going to read this and say, yes, Alda nailed it. She did it.
That's a good one. I'd probably say my mom, because my mom's the one who would share most of the stories with me. And the thing is that she doesn't speak English. She speaks it very little and could read it very little. She read the prologue. It took her a while to, go through it and whatnot, but she understood it and she loved it. She cried and whatnot, and she said she couldn't wait to read the book. So in January, Sourcebooks has a translation, right? So they hired me to do the translation as well, and I'm glad because I wanted to do it. I wanted to give it that flavor, that northern Mexican flavor, and I can't wait for my mom to read that. That's what I would like. I said, she's the one that shared most of the stories, and it's a love letter to her and my family.
Well, if you're doing the translation and you're finishing up hopefully book 2 now, can't you just go ahead and start the translation while you're at it, save some time?
Yeah, every now and then when I want to take a break, sometimes, I'll sneak over there and start trying to translate, so it's my break right now. Come January, I may have to get serious about it and do more, but yeah, it's exciting to be able, because it's different. It's some things are translated straight, right, in a direct way, but some of them are not, so you got to find that balance and keep the lyrical language in Spanish, going.
So is that then you sitting there agonizing over a new metaphor when you already came up with the perfect metaphor, or is it?
Yeah, now I gotta find a thesaurus in Spanish and and use the heck out of that.
And then I was curious if, and I know your great grandmother is not around to be able to read this book, but supposing that she were, or you meet up in the afterlife and she says, good news, I've got your book, read it a while ago, enjoyed it very much. I like the idea of a heaven where everyone is reading the books that we're writing still. That's my idea, Petra. They're fans of us up there. They're reading our novels as we speak. But imagine in this scenario, you meet up with your great grandmother and she has read the story. What would you want her reaction to be?
I wish she would realize just how amazing her life was, how her resilience, her bravery, how much I admire it, and all these people that are starting to read the book admire it too. I know she would probably be humble and probably do this like, no, it's no big deal, but that's what I see her doing. I could see her doing this already, and just kind of cover. She'd always smile and put her hand over her mouth, very, very timid. But yeah, she wouldn't believe it. There's no way. There's no way, that a book would be written about this. So that's what I think she would say.
Well, that brings me to a question. You're obviously not an objective observer. These are almost legends, I assume, that have been passed down to you. You've been hearing these stories. They're your family members. So how do you approach Petra in a way that's going to give her some faults, give her some flaws to make her a compelling character? How do you do that without lionizing her, and in a way, even though it's a fictional account, lionizing your grandmother as well?
I think at that point, when I put the flaws in, that's when I come in. That's when I put myself in the book. And I did that because Petra is at odds with her grandmother because they're both from different generations and view the world differently. And my mom and I were the same way. We were both immigrants, but the fact that we're from different generations, we saw things differently. And for instance, when I graduated high school, I was the first in my family to ever graduate high school. And she was really excited and supportive. You know, she was happy, and she said, okay, you could get a great job now, and that's it, we're good to go. And I said, no, I want to do college, you know, and join the military. And she said, what for? You know, what's the need? And I said, well, you know, I could get a better job. There are more opportunities if I do that. And she was kind of reluctant. And finally she said, okay, you know, so I did that. When I wanted to start grad school, she just said, okay, why? You know, there's really no need for grad school. You know, you've already have a diploma, a college diploma. What else? You know, that's more than your family ever had beyond. And I said, well, you know, I just feel there's more opportunities with a master's degree, and pursued that. So I'm glad I stopped there. You know, I didn't go for the PhD. Otherwise, it would have been another dilemma there. But I wanted to put that same conflict, you know, with Petra, that she has that conflict with her grandmother. And at times she was upset about it. But there's so much to learn from her grandmother, too, because her grandmother brings the wisdom and the strength, you know, from that generation. And it's the same thing with my mom. You know, there's a lot of wisdom she brought into my life as well. And so much wisdom that now, you know, I was able to write a book from it. So yeah, that was something I put in there, you know, to make Petra not as, like I said, idolized like I did with my grandma. And even my grandmother was the first one. Like I said, she had the desire to learn how to read and write, and her mother was a little reluctant too about, okay, do you really need it? You know, we've been doing it, you know, without it for years, so why would you need to do it now or learn it now? So
let's see, and then I wanted to talk a little bit about research, because you've got like 3 different librarians that you've thanked in the acknowledgements. I'm assuming you were not alive in 1913. So, maybe start with, you've got family photos. How do you go about recreating this world for yourself and then for the readers?
It was a lot of research. First, like I said, I had done research with academic books. A lot of them were historians. They were anthropologists who had been there in Mexico, and they did fabulous work to study the culture. And I also, something that helped me were the newspapers, of course, you know, that I came across the day-to-day in and out of the Mexican Revolution and how it was affecting the United States. I learned a lot from that. And there are some books that were published by journalists who were there, who actually traveled with the rebels, with the rebel army, and interviewed a lot of the rebel soldiers. So I used a lot of those. They inspired a lot of the scenes and characters. And there's also memoirs by women who were part of the rebel forces who gained ranks of captain and lieutenant and general, and I was able to incorporate those stories too into the book. And yeah, I have family stories, but the photographs were another big piece of the puzzle. A lot of the photographs, I have one, I don't know if you follow me, well, I'm not gonna answer that, but I have an Instagram account that I just opened. I'm so proud of myself because I'm not a big social media person, but about a few months ago, I created an Instagram account, and lately I've been posting the photographs that most inspired me during the research. And I have one in particular that is my favorite one, that shows 4 ladies. They're dressed elegantly. They have their silk dresses, long silk dresses, and they're walking arm in arm, all 4 of them. And opposite to them, walking the opposite way, are 2 women. It's actually a woman and a child. They're both barefoot, wearing ragged clothes. And as you see them, you know, they're dressed like my great-grandmother would have been dressed. And as they're about to cross each other, the picture captures a moment where the girl with the silk dress towards the edge, you know, that's facing the poor woman and child walking by, you can see her hand as she's reaching to her skirt and pulling it in, like she doesn't want it to touch the woman and child. And you can see this expression on her face, like her nose is about to wrinkle. You know, she's looking at them like, oh my goodness, here they come, you know, and you could see that. And it captures it, that instant, you know, is captured there. And one of the girls too looks at them. So you can see them looking, the other ones are looking at the camera, you know, they have those carefree smiles, but the other 2 look at the woman and child. And it's not look of sympathy, it's a different look. So there were so many photographs like that I was able to break down and analyze the body postures, the face expressions, and what was happening, not only what the lens captured at the center, but also the peripheral, the people around it, and how they were observing that story happening during that photo shoot. So a lot of that one inspired a scene in the book. So yeah, photographs to me were a treasure trove, just from gathering data for the story.
I've seen the photo and I remember the scene. I did not follow you on Instagram. I did follow, I believe I followed you on Twitter. I'm phobic of Instagram. I have an account. Don't follow me on there, esteemed audience. You will never hear from me. I never log on to it. But for esteemed audience who wants to see the photo, how should they follow you on Instagram? What's your...
On Instagram, I think it's, you say with an ad, right? Add Alda P Dobbs. So there you go.
That sounds plausible to me.
Yeah, I just learned it, so I'm still learning. Twitter, I don't even do that yet. I'm too scared. Maybe later, but not yet.
Well, I've taken Twitter and Facebook off of my phone. I log on to them a couple of times a day on the laptop. I have set times now because I learned that somewhere during the pandemic. You know what's not cheering me up? Social media. Get off of there. So I'll go on there to see what my author friends are up to promote the show, and then I'm out. Like, oh, that person I used to respect has crazy vaccine theories. No, close it. I don't want to read it. You were talking about war in this novel. There's a heartbreaking scene right up front. I don't think it's a spoiler, where we're afraid that Petra's father is going to be executed, and she's running toward him. The federales are nasty folks, and you don't sugarcoat what they're up to. That's why I've been trying to picture this as a picture book. I'm like, maybe. It would have to be a drastically modified version of the story, I would think. But even with the middle grade, you don't want to present a false reality. You don't want to betray the truth of war, and disrespect those who lived through it. But at the same time, you're writing for younger readers. How do you approach a subject as traumatic and dark as war for younger readers?
It was a challenge trying to do that, because you don't see any fiction books for children about the Mexican Revolution. So there was nothing for me to follow on that end. But something that helped me was reading other books that talked about war, middle grade books that did it. So for instance, I had one scene that in the middle of the book that it's really a sad moment, a dark moment for Petra. And I remember when I started writing that scene, I had just finished reading Stephen King's novel Misery. So you can only imagine what was going in my head. So when I wrote that scene and gave it to my husband, and my husband said, "Whoa, no, put the Stephen King down and rewrite the scene, because this is, remember, you're writing for children." I said, "Oh yeah," I remember rereading it and I said, "Yeah, there's better ways to do this, you know." So I remember going over to Avi again, his book Crispin, and then Lois Lowry, Number of the Stars, and different books that talked about situations like that, death and war, and just reading them and seeing how they mastered that, you know, how to present that for children. And I was just mesmerized how, you know, like they say, less is more. You know, you just got to pick the right words and the right timing to convey the message. And that's plenty. You know, you don't have to describe every gory detail. So I went back and rewrote the scene over and over until finally I was able to get it to that point. Like you said, I had to let kids know how it was, and the reality of it. But, you know, there's a certain way and certain words that you could express the same situation.
And then I've got some other questions for you. but I'm watching our time, and I know it's slipping away. Before we move on from Barefoot Dreams of Petroleum, a relatively lazy question that I still like to throw out there, because I've always envisioned this as a show that if I were going to be on a show, how would I want that show to be? And I would like to have a blank space personally, so I try to make that available for you as well. What is a question you wish someone had asked you about this book? So let's pretend I ask it, and then you go ahead and answer it.
Oh my goodness, that's a good one. Oh, it's going to take me a minute here to think.
Well, free space.
Huh. Ooh. Let me see. I've never been asked that, so I've been asked a lot of questions, but not that one. Let me see.
I can ask you a small one while you think, if you like.
Yeah, give me. I have to put that in the back burner of my brain. I guess I have only certain neurons available.
Chapter titles in Spanish.
The title in Spanish, you said? I'm sorry?
Chapter titles. I noticed were in Spanish. I was just curious.
They were. When I was typing them, it just inspired me to write it. I guess probably because at the beginning I have a quote, a Mexican dicho or proverb, that I put at the beginning of the book, and that's one that I've always liked since I was a kid. And I'll read it to you in English, and it says, I know it in Spanish by heart, but in the translation it says, "There's no curse that lasts 100 years, nor a body that can endure it." And I like it because it's been 100 years, over 100 years since the Mexican Revolution. And there's people that argue, scholars that argue, whether the Mexican Revolution really ended ever or not, or if it's still going on right now. So that's when it makes you put that into perspective. The 100 years, there's not a curse that lasts 100 years. Well, is there? Is there not? Is it still going on? So I put that quote for there because of that reason. And that quote itself, the fact that it was in Spanish, later on, it just felt, like that was a direction I should take to name the theme of each chapter in Spanish. I felt it gave it a flavor. So, and more so because they're in Mexico. But it may change now that they're in America for book 2.
Oh, so we'll have English titles and Spanish text? Well, certainly at least one edition, since you're doing the translation.
All right.
Did I buy you enough time to think up a question, or shall we move on to talk about writing habits and flying saucers?
Oh, well, I was going to talk about, I looked at my pens and I said, oh, maybe if somebody asked me, do you handwrite or, or do you type your story? So, yeah, I guess my thing would be is that I love to brainstorm with paper and pen. I can't do it typing at all. It has to be paper and pen when I brainstorm, and I feel like there's more freedom in a physical page, when I just jot down upside down, spin it around, circle it. I feel like it's almost a dance, so I get to do that. And I can't do that in the typewriter. So once I have the brainstorming or notes or dialogue or characters, even, trying to draw the characters, which I'm not going to show because I'm no artist by any means, but sometimes I do that. And that's something I can't do with my laptop.
One day scholars are going to track all that stuff down and put it in the Alda P. Dobbs official library, where it will be available.
Yeah.
I used to do all handwriting for the plotting and the planning, and then sit down and type. But then I got to the point where I just couldn't read my own handwriting anymore.
Yeah, me too. Sometimes I'm like, oh, what does that say? I can't believe it.
I haven't handwritten anything other than just basic notes or maybe a grocery list in years now.
Oh my goodness.
Everything typed or put on the phone. Say it ain't so. So, okay, what does your writing day look? I know you're a big proponent of, you believe writers should write every day. So what does that look like? And what if I only write 5 words, 1 sentence per the day? Does that count as her having written that day?
I think it does. In my opinion, writing every day. It could be anything. It could be you doing the dishes and thinking of scenes in your head and thinking of the dialogue you would use and putting characters in this way or that way or in a different room. And to me, that's writing. You're using those creative juices and whatnot, or thinking of the dialogue. I do that a lot when I'm driving or listening to a book on craft. I think that's a good exercise too. I do that a lot. Or just reading, reading somebody else's work. That in itself, I think, is also a form of writing if you're analyzing, the material as well. But as long as you do some of that every day, and yeah, it's nice if you have the time to sit down and actually jot down words. That's going to help you a lot too. But if you do write a paragraph and the next day you find you're short in time, in your memory, refer back to that paragraph and try to rewrite it in your mind, and you'll see that sometimes it comes out better, with you just thinking about it, and to the point that it'll come better to me at a certain line of dialogue that I keep repeating to myself, trying to make it better. And I have to put the dishes down and dry my hands quickly and go write it down somewhere before I forget, because but I'm constantly in my head. I'm in the shower and I'm thinking about it. I'm waking up and I'm thinking about it. So it's always something that's in my head.
Do you keep a regular schedule of I'm going to write from this time to this time every day, or? You're laughing at me. That doesn't seem like that.
I wish. I mean, that's a bad thing, that when you're starting out and that first book, you have that luxury of time, you just not waltz through it, but you have a lot of time to revise and rethink it and revise and whatnot. You have beta readers, you have mentors, you have critique partners and whatnot. And then you submit it, sign the contract, and all of a sudden you have a deadline for book 2. And it's a set deadline, it's a hard deadline. So now you're under the clock to write that second book. You don't have that luxury of, okay, today I'm going to do this, or today I'm going to, no, now you got to write. So that's what I've discovered now, that now when they tell me this is due, yeah, I got to make time for it or figure out how I'm going to do it. And I wish I could tell you that, yes, I write from this hour to this hour, but I don't. I have 2 small kids. And with COVID, I had to homeschool, and the dynamic that it changed to try to make time, a certain schedule. So I wrote whenever, they're playing. If they're quiet for the time, that's when I sneak out and start writing or whatnot. Same thing now that they're back in school. This is the first time they're back in school. So I'm starting to get into a routine, and I'm forcing myself because I don't have a deadline. So yeah, I push my writing first, edits or whatnot, and then I have the launch coming out. So if my edits are done, then yeah, I go into the marketing. Okay, how to promote the book, how to learn that, and hopefully once edits and launch are done, then I could focus on other projects. I'm hoping I have a couple of picture books in mind and a YA. So I'm hoping little by little I could get time for those, so I could start learning that magic of picture books. So we'll see.
During a pandemic, I got an email a couple of weeks ago now. It was a very nice email from a reader, and they asked me, "Where's Banneker Bones 4? When can I look forward to that?" And I'm like, I was homeschooling a 7-year-old while I was finishing Banneker 3. You don't know how close it came to you not getting that book. We're going to have to wait a long time before there's a Banneker Bones 4. Sorry, buddy.
No, exactly. I mean, that's the way, especially my kids, both of them, I had 2 of them that were in homeschool. And for each one, I had about 5-7 different apps. One for math, one for reading, one for story time, one for science, social studies, and each app had a different password, and they couldn't match the passwords because somehow they knew they were, it was me. So they wouldn't let me do the same username, the same password, and even between their accounts either. So it was just chaos. I was just losing my mind. So, but yeah, I'm here. I can't believe it. It's almost launch day for me. I'm here. I didn't think I was going to make it this far, but I'm here.
Well, you're going to have a tremendous launch for Barefoot Dreams, and then you're coming back strong with book 2 next year. And then it sounds like you've got plans for, I mean, obviously you got to get book 2 and the translation and continue to homeschool the kids and all of that. But when that's done, sounds like you've got plans to stay within YA and middle grade writing, you think, or are you going to maybe try some other genre?
I do have ideas here and there flowing, but mainly they're all middle grade. Majority are middle grade. And I have a few picture book and a couple of Ys, but middle grade is my favorite age. I just love that age. You know, it's that, you know, in between, you know, being still with the family, but trying to get that independence. And I think it's such a marvelous age when they're learning how to become independent and how to detach and be on their own. So it's beautiful.
I agree 100%, obviously, and I should clarify, just in case there's any doubt for our esteemed audience. I know that there are some people that ask a question like that, like, when are you going to write a real book for adults? That is never the rate in which I mean that question. I like books for adults, but middle grade books, that's the real books. So you're with what you're doing. You're doing God's work.
Yep.
Alda P. Dobbs, while you were an engineer in the Air Force, I assume at some point they pulled you aside and said, look, this is recovered alien technology. We need you to reverse engineer this for us. I'm assuming that happened and you can't tell me.
Yeah, I'd have to kill you if I told you.
I don't know, depending on what you told me. Maybe that's a private thing, but oh, it's beautiful. It was worth it. I'm glad I know that.
No, I was in communications. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, I said in the Air Force, I just said communications, nothing secretive. So I was just a calm guy.
Have you ever seen a ghost and or a flying saucer?
Not that I know of, no. Sober or no, I'm just kidding. I'm joking. No, I don't think I've seen one. No, I wish, but in my book, I'm sure I will one day.
Fingers crossed. Well, I'm watching the time, and the esteemed audience doesn't know what a trooper you are. I'm getting to you after you've done an hour and a half previous event on screen, and I so appreciate you making time for me. And this has been just wonderful. I can't wait to share it with the world. My final question is always some variation of, if you could go back to the start of your career, the middle of your career, whenever it would have been most useful to you, and give yourself some advice that would have made your path easier and might make easier the paths of everyone watching or listening to us, what would you go back and tell yourself?
I would say follow your heart, follow your passion. Whenever, like people tell you, right? If you follow your passion, you love what you do, it's not work just because you love it so much. And I truly believe that. And I say that because physics was my passion. I loved it a lot. And during the time when it came to deciding what I would do for grad school, I wanted to pursue physics, but I saw the job market that there wasn't much for physicists. And I decided to switch to engineering because there's a better economy for engineering at the time. And in hindsight, I should have stuck to what I was more passionate for. And I did like engineering, but physics, to me, the way you use your imagination for physics, it's almost like writing. You have to be very creative to picture a lot of the theoretical world around you. And the same thing with writing. I always liked the confidence. And I had that in my heart that I wanted to write. I wanted to tell stories. And it was just that lack of confidence, that not believing that I could do it and whatnot, that I figured, no, it's too much of a risk, but I had that in my heart, had I listened to it earlier, could have, would have, should have, right? But it happened and now I'm here. But yeah, that's something I would have told myself before. Follow your heart, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to follow your heart. You might think, well, what if, and whatnot. And yeah, they could pan out or something else happened. I took a job in engineering thinking it was secure. And then 2008 happened. And guess what? It wasn't secure anymore. So now I'm stuck with something I don't feel passionate about and something that I may lose anyway. So had I just stuck with it before, when you have passion, doors open for you too. So that's something to keep in mind.
Where can esteemed audience find you online, follow you on social media and all that good stuff?
Sure. You can find me at do I still say www? At aldapdobbs.com. That's old fashioned saying www. Or you can find me on Instagram at
//.
yes, I can say the whole thing. I guess how do you say at Alda P Dobbs? That's for my Instagram, and in Facebook, it's going to be Alda P Dobbs as well. So, and there you'll find playlists too. If you want to hear music of the Mexican Revolution, I have a playlist there, a Spotify list that has about 10, 12 songs that are polka, corridos, and waltzes from that era. So it's a lot of fun. You can throw a party with it.
Are those the songs you listened to while you were writing the book?
They are. They're songs I grew up with. And then when I wanted to give up, when I thought I couldn't anymore, I put them on and it just motivated me. I said, okay, I got to do this for these people that were there that gave up so much. So it's like, it's a story for them, and just wanted to honor them.
List for the second book?
I'm working on one as well right now. So it's a good question though. I'm going to try to see if I can compile it and put it into a playlist like that.
Gotcha. So if esteemed audience follows you on Spotify now, they could probably actively watch you build that second playlist. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know you could do that. Wow.
I assume.
It's like, oh, so I feel like somebody's watching me now.
All my playlists are private. I have playlists assigned for the books, but I kept it private because it's not your audience. The Kanye West while I was writing Banneker Bones. Yes, I did. It was fine. As always, esteemed audience, follow me at Middle Grade Ninja, but don't bother looking for me on Spotify. I've hidden all that stuff. Ninja.com, read interviews with thousands of literary agents, authors, editors, Molly Cusick, Avi, all the best people. Purchase your copy of Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees for free, and then purchase for money Banneker Bones and the Alligator People and Banneker Bones and the Cyborg Conspiracy. And God willing, I'm alive. I'll see you next week.